Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi. Good morning. Good morning, professors, dignitaries, colleagues, students, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to University of Indonesia. I am Evi Fitriani. I am a lecturer at International Relations Department, University of Indonesia, and European Studies Center, University of Indonesia. I will be the moderator as well as the MC for this occasion. I would like to welcome Ambassador McCanning to our university. I hope you will have a great time this morning with our discussion with student colleagues and professors. Ladies and gentlemen, this occasion is hosted by University of Indonesia and the British Embassy in Jakarta in order to allow collaboration in the climate change issue. We have Center for Climate Change at the University of Indonesia, and in this occasion, this issue will be on the climate change. Without further ado, we'll have Rector Gumilar Sumantri, Rector of University of Indonesia, to welcome all of us, and then we'll follow with the discussion with our four speakers. Professor Gumilar, please.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We are very happy to have with us this morning His Excellency Mark Canning, the UK Ambassador. Ambassador Canning is no stranger to Indonesia or to UI. Welcome also to all of our other British friends and to all of you here this morning. The focus of this visit is on the extremely important issue of the predicted rise in global temperatures and the likely impacts this will have in particular here in Indonesia. I would like to thank the UK for its efforts in this regard and the way it has been working with Indonesia to help reduce carbon emission and encourage strong but sustainable economic growth here. Research studies conducted here in Indonesia have confirmed the reality of climate change as reported by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and made it possible for us to predict what is going to happen in the coming decades if we allow things to go on as they are. The impacts on Indonesia, with even the most conservative rise in temperatures, are alarming. They include flooding of coastal land and the loss of arable land, water shortages, soil degradation and lower crop yields, and the spread of diseases like malaria. Ladies and gentlemen, the impacts of human activity are going to be serious, socially and economically. Doing something is not something we can put off. UI considers climate change a priority, and that is reflected in our research, teaching and administration. We run courses on the environment from undergraduate to doctoral level. We have also initiated a world university ranking system called Green Metric World University Ranking, which gives higher education institutions around the world a greenest score based on data they submit online. Our climate change strategy has a number of key objectives. We want to understand how climate change affects water security, food security, health security, and of course, community livelihood. We want to perform research that monitors key indicators for helping ecosystem adapt to climate change. We want to be involved in the creation of policies and programs aimed at reducing emissions. We also want to be involved in awareness raising of the process of climate change and its causes such as deforestation. Ladies and gentlemen, in all of this we want to work together with different kinds of institutions, government, research, NGO, and private sector to help develop viable and economically attractive alternative energy sources and also sustainable business practices. The UI Climate Change Research Center has produced a good deal of research on climate change, deforestation, and sustainability. Its core focus areas are policy creation, readiness, multidisciplinary approaches to ecosystem adaptation, and sustainable financing. We at UI believe strongly that Indonesia should fully commit to immediate and medium-term action to combat climate change. We currently depend a great deal on fossil fuels and a huge forest resources. These obviously need to be managed wisely. We at UI are ready to take the lead in pursuing large-scale research to provide valid and reliable data for our local situation. The map that you are presenting to us today, I'm sure, will go a long way to stimulating joint action. We look forward to working on a green print for sustainable growth in partnership with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Gumilar. Without further ado, we'll start our discussion with our four speakers. I would like to invite Ambassador Makaning, Ibu Amanda Katilinioda, Mr. Mark George, and Mr. Stuart Bruce. Please come forward. Right. I would like to introduce Ambassador Makaning before he gives speech. Ambassador Makaning has been in Indonesia several times, and this is the second post for him. He was here in 93 and 97 as the first secretary at the British Embassy in Jakarta. And he also served as a senior diplomat in Kuala Lumpur, and then British ambassador in Burma or Myanmar, and also British ambassador in Zimbabwe before he came to Indonesia in 2011. He got education at the London University in modern history and also master in business administration. I would like to invite Ambassador Makaning to deliver his speech. Please, Ambassador.
Assalamu alaikum. Selamat pagi semua. Selamat pagi kepada Bapa Rektor Profesor Gumilar. Saya sangat senang mendapatkan kesempatan untuk berada di UI pada pagi hari ini. Nama saya Mark Canning, Duta Besar Inggris untuk Indonesia dan ASEAN, dan saya menjabat posisi ini di Indonesia kira-kira sudah 8 bulan. Tapi ini adalah yang kedua kalinya saya ditempatkan di Indonesia sebagai perwakilan pemerintah Inggris. Pertama kali saya ditugaskan di sini pada tahun 93 hingga tahun 98 di Departemen Perdagangan di Kedutaan Inggris. Dan sekarang saya di sini sebagai duta besar di negara yang sangat luas dan hebat ini. Mohon maaf, bahasa Indonesia saya masih kurang lancar. Jadi izinkan saya kembali ke bahasa ibu saya, yaitu bahasa Inggris. It's a great pleasure to be with you today, and thank you to so many students for joining us. Being here with you, being back in this university, I think fills me with a sense of optimism, because I see in you the future of this great country of Indonesia. Since I was last here, Indonesia has moved from a dictatorship to a democracy. It has become a country of increasing political and economic significance. It is now the world's 18th largest economy and the 3rd largest democracy in the world. It's an economy which, despite all the bad things that are happening economically around the world, particularly in Europe, is continuing to grow at a rapid rate. You have developed a press that is free and which is vibrant, and you have developed some important institutions of democracy. So for me, I have seen a huge transformation in this country. There are, as we all know, still challenges to be overcome. We read about them every day in the press. The government itself acknowledges that. But Indonesia, for us, for Britain, is quite clearly a country which is on the move, a country with a real future. And as I say, you, the young of this country, have an important part in determining what that future is to be. But you are also not just the future of Indonesia, you are the custodians, the protectors of all the natural things that are to be found within this country. This is a nation which is home to around 15% of the biodiversity in the world. The plants, the animals, 15% have their home in this country. And looking after these things, in many ways, is the most important thing that you can do. So the role of Indonesia, and the role of all of you who call it home, is going to be very important as we try globally to reduce deforestation, to reduce environmental damage, and to reduce the level of CO2, the level of carbon dioxide emissions. Because as Indonesia has developed in economic terms, it has also become a major emitter of CO2. Indonesia is now the 3rd largest emitter of carbon dioxide in the world. And just to put that into perspective, although the Indonesian economy accounts for only 0.5% of global GDP, the CO2 emissions from Indonesia are around 5% of global emissions. So that tells you that your emissions are running out of synchronization for your economic development. As you know, President Yudhoyono has shown real leadership in this area. He has made clear his determination to reduce the level of CO2 emissions. He wants to do this by 26% by 2020, and he has pledged to do it by 41% if Indonesia has the right level of international support to do it. So one of the most important things that the international community can do, one of the most important things that countries like Britain can do, is to help Indonesia meet this very difficult challenge. You will have seen around your campus this week the map which we have here. It's called The Impact of a Global Temperature Rise of 4 degrees in Southeast Asia. And it's a map which 2 weeks ago we presented to the Vice President, also to a number of other Indonesian ministers, and to Pak Kuntoro and his team, who are in the forefront of trying to address this problem. It's completely right that we should be presenting this to your university here in this library and in this university, which takes the issue of the environment, the protection of the environment, giving buildings a green credentials very seriously. The map that we will soon unveil was produced in December 2011 by the British Meteorological Office, the agency that looks at our weather and which has a worldwide reputation. And it shows some of the impacts that might occur in this part of the world, in Southeast Asia, if the global average temperature rises 4 degrees centigrade, 7 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial levels. The map is very nice to look at, but if you look carefully, it conveys a worrying message. It illustrates what climate change is going to do if we don't do something to arrest its progress. The extent to which temperatures rise depends on whether we continue to emit greenhouse gases into the atmosphere at its current rate, or whether we take together steps to reduce those emissions. The difference between those two courses of action, doing something and doing nothing, is illustrated in this map. You will see that for Indonesia, the difference is between some islands continuing to exist or disappearing. It's the difference between age-old ways of life continuing or being cut off. So the impacts are very, very serious. The Meteorological Office has been in business for over 150 years, and it has a worldwide reputation. And it has worked closely with another agency called the Hadley Center for Climate Prediction and Research to produce this map. Now, in this area you will find a lot of different opinions expressed about climate change. Some of the scientific modeling may produce slightly different results, but the outcomes that have been captured in this map have been cross-checked with a whole range of leading climate institutions around the world. And the picture that they present is one with which all those agencies agree. So it's a map which has tremendous knowledge and authority behind it. That, if you like, is the bad news. The good news, I think, is that governments are starting to wake up to this problem. Indonesia and Indonesia's president has certainly woken up to it and has made bold commitments to try and drive down the level of emissions. But the other thing that is happening, and you can see from how many students are with us today, is that people are starting to wake up to this problem, and in particular young people are starting to wake up. And I think that's a very important factor. Increasingly, people and governments are realizing that doing things the old way is no longer an option. They need to harness the power of their populations, and they need to meet the challenge also with the private sector. So we believe in the UK that there is not a choice to be made between being economically successful and having green, environmentally friendly credentials. We believe that the two objectives are mutually sustaining. We believe that rapid economic growth is entirely compatible with a low carbon economy. We believe that there is money to be made out of being green. It's smart business, not tree hugging. There is business to be made out of this, and this is a very important factor in achieving the right results. But we also recognize that making the transition is not easy. If it was, I think everyone would have done it by now. But with the right leadership and the right expertise, it can be done. It's not a question of whether we should do it or not. The map makes clear that in fact there's no choice. It's something that has to be done. Now, people of my generation may be able to muddle through, but those, the young, like you, I'm afraid do not have that luxury. Solutions are going to be required to this problem, and they're going to be required sooner rather than later if the predictions in this map are not to come to reality. But we, as I've said, in Europe and the UK, are ready and are sharing our expertise with you, and I think that it's one of the most important things that we can do here. So I will leave it at that, but before I open the discussion to the floor for your contributions and contributions from our expert panel, I just wanted to pose a couple of questions. How can we get all areas of Indonesian society to tackle the challenge of climate change together? And how will each of you here make your own difference, however small, to this problem? So thank you again for giving me the honor of coming to this great institution. It's a great pleasure to be here. And now I think you will be able to hear from people that are far more expert than I in this field. But thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Ambassador Canning. We'll continue with the unveiling of the map by the Ambassador and Rector Gumilar. Please come forward, Ambassador. The map already explained by the Ambassador. It is a Southeast Asia 4-degree map. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what's called Southeast Asia 4-degree map, and already explained by the Ambassador. It is a model map about the 4-degree raise of the temperature. So it is a model map. Thank you, Ambassador Canning, Rector Gumilar, and Ibu Amanda. We'll continue with this speech by Ibu Amanda Katilinioda from Indonesian National Council on Climate Change, Dewan Nasional Perubahan Iklim. Pada Ibu Amanda, please, welcome.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat pagi, ibu-ibu, bapak-bapak. On behalf of the Indonesian National Council on Climate Change, I would like to thank the University of Indonesia for hosting this event. Ambassador Canning, I hope my Indonesian is better than yours. UI is famous for its reputation as an educational institution, as well as a place for hosting great events, in fact, world events. 4 years ago, even before the National Council on Climate Change was established, UI students organized a climate change event attended by 600 students, and Professor Gumilar was there too, informing the students and encouraging the students to talk and study climate change. So let's give a big applause for the University of Indonesia. And every time I come here, the campus is more beautiful than ever. And also UI is a place for climate change experts. My colleagues and seniors are here who always help us with research, with seminars, workshops, and education. We have Pak Komara, we have Pak Budi, and of course Dr. Yatna, who have been working with me for more than 20 years. And as we know, Ambassador Canning, the British government is always active in the field of either science or the negotiation of climate change. When we hear Ambassador Canning talk about climate change, at first I thought he's the UK negotiator because he really understands the issue very well. And as we know, the British government also encouraged lots of climate change activities in Indonesia, such as the Climate Champion, as well as the British Council's effort in developing climate change modules for children since the elementary school up to high school. And also, I would like to commend the climate change exhibition at the British Museum. I think it's the most sophisticated educational exhibition on climate change in the world. So I hope there could be some activities where we can have students go see the British Museum, especially its climate change exhibition. I work at the National Council on Climate Change as its coordinator for communication, education, and information division. And I'm also the national focal point for the UNFCCC, or the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, in areas related to education, training, public awareness, public access to information, public participation, and international cooperation. So this event today really helped our activities, that we could inform other countries that there are lots of Article 6 related activities in Indonesia. The National Council on Climate Change is chaired by the President of the Republic of Indonesia. It has 17 ministers as its member, as well as the head of the Climatological Meteorological Agency. And we at the Secretariat work to assist the National Council on Climate Change members with their activities. There are lots of activities related to students and academia. The National Council on Climate Change annually has the Indonesia Climate Change Education Forum and Expo, which we will have next April, from April 19th to the 22nd. And the National Council on Climate Change also organized Youth for Climate Camp, where we have maybe about 50 University of Indonesia students attended the Youth for Climate Camp. So ideally, what would we like the students to learn or to know about climate change? First, we would like students to understand the science of climate change and also the impacts, which we can see in this map. And after we understand the impact, what are the solutions from the adaptation part of or the mitigation part? The adaptation is where we adjust to our development activities, and the mitigation part is where we reduce our greenhouse gas emission, as we can see here in this campus, where you have a bike lane and other activities to reduce climate change activities, as well as the hutan kota. And also, after we understand the science, the impacts, and the solutions, of course, as students, we would like to understand, or you would like to understand, the political landscape, the international conferences. There was one in Bali, Copenhagen, in Cancun, and the last time in Durban, and the next one in Qatar. What are they talking about there, and how we as students or academia can contribute to the process? And last but not least, of course, is how to communicate all what you have learned to the general public and to your communities as well. Ibu-ibu dan bapak-bapak, in closing, I would like to share with you what President Yudhoyono mentioned in one of the cabinet meeting on coordinating climate change with the National Climate Change member. He said that in terms of cooperation, what's important for us is partnership. Equal partnership is important. Therefore, we would like to include all stakeholders, including the government, civil society, private sector, the general public, and of course the academia, including students and their lecturers and professors. And we do hope through many comprehensive partnership or through many international cooperation and partnership, we can have many more activities, especially at the University of Indonesia. Thank you.
Terima kasih, Ibu Amanda. Thank you for Ibu Amanda for very enlightening speech. Just would like to underline some notes from Ambassador Canning and Ibu Amanda. Ambassador Canning emphasized how Indonesia will how Indonesia will tackle the challenge of the climate change, and how can we who are sitting here can make an impact and can contribute to the solution. And this is to the question that I think is very important for us and the young generation who are sitting here today, but also for older generation, for the future, your future generation too. So this is very, very important question. And Ibu Amanda also underlined three important questions for students, especially how we study the climate change and its impact, and what is the solution that we can find. And the second, what is political landscape of this climate change and how we can contribute to the solution and cooperation. And finally, how we share our knowledge and concern to general public. And this is also a very important message to our young generation and student. And we hope by attending this discussion and hearing this conversation, and also understanding the map in front of us, we have more concern and also can contribute more to tackle this global warming challenge. I would like to continue with discussion and invite questions from students, colleagues, and professors regarding the topic that has been spoken by Ambassador Canning and Ibu Amanda. But we also have Mr. Mark George and Mr. Stuart Bruce to help answer the question. So please. Bapak, silakan satu. Yes, Bapak Jatna. We have that lady with the blue veil, and tiga dulu ya. Please, Bapak. Pak Yatna.
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies Ambassador, Ibu Amanda, Mr. Marx and Bruce, and Pak Rector, and ladies and gentlemen. I am the chairman of the Climate Change Research Center at the University of Indonesia. I just want to share with you what we have done so that know what that really aims in the futures. Just to let you know that we just really basically knew last year we established the center. Even though I think Pak Rector already mentioned 4 years ago we hosted an international meeting on the climate change and also international meeting with the 40 universities around the world on the water and climate change. And the last one, we also hosted the adaptation strategies for Indonesia, how they cope with the climate change. We have approximately 30 staff at the university, ranging from economy, engineering, anthropology, forestry, and many others. So, and we've been working with the DNPI, coordinated by Ibu Amanda, and also, of course, we working with other agencies in Indonesia. And we've been working with the Cornell University, Columbia University, also University of Reading in UK. Hopefully that we had big university now in collaboration, Bandung Institute of Technology, and also Bogor Agricultural University. The three universities trying to establish what we call the graduate student for climate change. I think we're trying to share how do we develop this. And the first camp is from University of Reading. We are trying to help the establishment of the graduate program. So hopefully the ambassador and two advisor for the climate change, I hope that you can also help us in implementing this proposal. The one that I really would like to comment on this issue, I like to see the map. I mean, I'm really, it was really amazing to see that 6 degrees in Borneo and 5 degrees in Sumatra. It was really amazing that I think Indonesia has really come to that 100 years is really high. I don't know if we don't do, as the President mentioned, that we have to reduce 26% or 41%. I think we may have to come up with some disaster in the future. And we have been, our staff has been calculating the model. We may have to lose 2,000 islands in the future, unless we do tackling this climate change. But again, as the university, I guess that we've been doing also training. We're hosting the training, REDD training, Climate Change 101 for general public. So I hope that we can collaborate with the UK in order to magnify this training, so that in the future not only the students, but also the general public, especially in Jakarta. It's so easy here. You can see that our forests, we have 100-hectare forests, to be learned how that really we can see the carbon footprint in Indonesia can be seen from the university. I think the effort from Rector on even the green metric, we're trying to get university to be more green, because we have to start with our first before we telling everybody. I think that's our message. The third one, we would like to see that, you know, Indonesia has more than 500 tribes. I think we cannot say we can do all things with one shot. That's why I thought that we have a lot of anthropologists who have been working, for example, we're discussing with a lot of anthropologists, how do we use this? Because local community, basically, they have their traditional right, they have traditional knowledge, and we have to appreciate it. I think by having a lot of university in collaboration with other university outside, I think it's making more and more knowledge coming out from the field. I think that's from us. Thank you very much, the ambassador, for the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Yatna. And next, please mention your name and institution. And the third, will you come forward and stand over there, please? Thank you.
Supaya tidak membelakangi. Nama saya Erli Janata, saya dari Pasca Sarjana Hubungan Internasional. My name is Erli, and I'm a student. I have some points that first you're talking about, both of you talking about how to tackle this problem. We cannot just empower having cooperation with the state, but also having cooperation with all the stakeholders, including civil society. But there's a problem that bother me. I watched this program a couple days ago. In Borneo, the people have less intention to preserve the forest because for them, the economical value is not there for them. I mean, it's easier for them just to kill the orangutan and then, kill the mother and then sell the babies to I don't know, maybe people who likes exotic animals. For them that's more economical. Or maybe it's easy for them to cut all the trees and then plant for palm oil, palm tree, for example. So what I'm saying here is that in reality, you have these people who actually there to preserve the forest, to take care of the forest, but they do the other way around because they don't see any values in preserving the forest. So is there any way or is there any policy both from Indonesian government or from the British government to have this to have this helpful way for the community, so they see, yes, it's there for us to preserve, not just talking about the climate change. It's too sophisticated for them, So I think that's the question.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. Next question, please. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Dinar from Open University of Indonesia. This is my question. What is the impact of climate change in Indonesia for the developed countries like the UK? And then expectation of what the British Council after the completion of this event be held. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I don't get your question. Can you repeat it again?
Repeat, okay. This is my question. What is the impact of climate change in Indonesia for the developed countries like the UK? And then the last my question, expectation of what the British Council after the completion of this event be held. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 questions. You want to start? Mr. You want to start answering it? Yes, go.
Before I hand over to my more expert panel, I just wanted to make a couple of points. The first is going back to this point about what we can do. I've found as ambassador, and I'm sure you find, some subjects you feel you can get your teeth into. You know what they're about. You can change them. And some subjects are just too big that you think there's nothing I can do and you move on. But of course, as I've said, this subject is one, this problem is one that we've got to confront. So I would say that what can you do as an audience, as students? The first thing is to think as consumers and to think about the products you're buying, to think where they come from, to start asking questions. Everyone now is calling their products sustainable, but the fact is they're not. Some are not. And consumers can really make a difference to the way that major corporations are behaving. And one of the most powerful things I've seen since I've been here has been the way in which a British company called Unilever is the biggest purchaser of crude palm oil in the world. It goes into their soaps, it goes into their biscuits, everything. And they have started to say to producers here, we do not like the way you are producing your palm oil. We are not going to buy that palm oil, because if we do buy it, the consumers in the UK are going to stop buying Unilever products. But what's really interesting about that is some of these companies that have been blacklisted here in Indonesia have gone back to their operations. They've revisited their operations, and they have made the changes that satisfy the buyer, that satisfy Unilever. And Unilever has gone back, has inspected their operations, and has started once more to buy their products. And Unilever isn't the only company doing this. All the major multinationals now care deeply about where their products come from. They know the damage that one story can occur, that the plantation that they get their palm oil from has killed the orangutans. It can do real damage. So I would say, start to exercise your power as a consumer. Buy the products that you think are being produced right. Ask the questions that when you're not sure. And also, think about your power in a political way. Make clear to your representatives that these are issues you care about. And you are very fortunate that you have a president and you have a government that thinks in the same way. But as we know, there are others that do not think in the same way, and one has to change attitudes, and it's going to take a bit of time. I also wanted to say that the only way this problem can be solved is to make it pay, to make it more worth people's while to do things the correct way than the other way. And one of the things the UK is doing is to second an expert to the Ministry of Finance. And people may think, what's that got to do with climate change? Well, it's fundamental, because you have got to construct a tax base and other incentives that make it pay, that give tax breaks for good behavior and tax penalties for bad behavior, that look at the impact of subsidies. Does it make sense to be subsidizing middle-class people to fill up their Mercedes with fuel? I don't think so. But these are difficult policy questions that need to be looked at. And the final point I wanted to make, what's the impact of Indonesian climate change for the UK? There are some problems that cross boundaries, and the impact of climate change that is triggered by Indonesian emissions will be felt everywhere. It'll be felt in Brunei and Singapore, in the Middle East. So we're all in this together, and we need to do it together. So I just hand it on to the panel now.
Thank you, Ambassador, and Ibu Amanda, and then Mr. Mark George will continue answer the questions. Please.
Thank you for the excellent comments and questions, especially the graduate students from International Relations. We do have some students from the Hubungan Internasional visiting the National Council on Climate Change and ask everything about climate change negotiations. So that's an excellent event, actually, where we could share enough information between the negotiators and the students. To answer your question, the first rule of thumb is, if you create programs affecting the livelihood of people, you also have to provide alternatives. So that answers your question when there is a policy, for example, to reduce carbon dioxide emission, and society or people do not want to do that because it's affecting their economy. Please visit the National Council on Climate Change website. It's www.dnpi.go.id. In there, you will see some studies and some assessments in some provinces of Indonesia where the province can reduce the emission and increase their regional income. So actually, that's what we are looking for. And if you read the fact sheet prepared by the UK Climate Change Unit, the first bullet point says, in 2009, the President of Indonesia committed to reduce carbon emissions by 26% from business as usual through national action and 41% with assistance by 2020. The policy is widely available on the internet, and in the introduction, you will see that the policy in its implementation should not affect economic stability. So we are still following the concept of pro-job, pro-growth, pro-poor, and environment. The second one will be answered by our colleagues from the UK Climate Change Unit, but also there is another important statement that I think we all agree, that climate change is a global problem that needs global mobilization of resources. That's why every country is involved, and that's why everybody wants to be in on the action.
Terima kasih, Bu Amanda. I'd just like to address, was it Mbak Adley, who asked the first question about incentives. Forests have many uses. They have a role as the home for biodiversity and species. They have a role as the livelihood for communities. They also have a role in building the economy of Indonesia, whether that's through palm oil, whether that's through timber, but they have a role in all these areas. And I think when we address climate change, it's important that we don't forget that all these roles are valid and they're all important. Therefore, when we talk about incentives, it's not necessarily about changing what people or what communities are doing, but it's about changing how they do that. That might mean bringing in efficiency to plantations. I believe if you compare the Indonesian palm oil industry to that in Malaysia, the Indonesian productivity levels are almost 70% smaller over comparable sizes of land area. If that can be addressed, suddenly you're giving those communities much more output, much more income for the same area of land, meaning they can reduce logging, they can reduce land use change in new areas. And then of course, as well as efficiency, there's sustainability. We have to log, it's part of building the nation in every country. But at the same time, it's about, okay, what do we do as well as logging? We also have to plant. We also have to ensure that what we are taking, we are giving back so that it's still there in the future. And I think those are two very important areas of focus so that we can keep communities with their livelihoods. They can still live from the forest, they can still profit from the forest, but it will allow us to preserve so much forest as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Stuart. I'll just add something on incentives. It's absolutely the case that we have to change the incentives to get the type of better behavior that the ambassador mentioned. I mean, the good news is that if it's done carefully, it can be achieved. So for example, we have been working with a community in South Sulawesi, which had traditionally been involved in a lot of illegal logging. And working with that community, we've been able to support them to move to a more sustainable approach, which has resulted in them having now a certification from the Forestry Conservation Standard, and they now sell their timber at premium prices and are more managing their plantation in a more sustainable way. So it can be done, and I think the important thing in Indonesia is that more and more of these types of support is done because it helps to illustrate that there is an alternative to the ways which might be less sustainable. I'll just briefly address the issue of what do we hope to come out of today's event. We very much, I mean, firstly, I would probably like to say on behalf of all of the panel members that we're really delighted to see so many people in the room not just from this university, but also from other institutions. And I think this is sending a very strong signal to us about the importance that you see in this issue. And that's a really good message for us. And we hope that this is very much the start of a dialogue. In April last year, we established a new climate change unit in the British Embassy. And that unit, its job is to build a dialogue, build programs in Indonesia so that the UK and Indonesia can work together. So we want to do the policy type projects that Mark mentioned, that the ambassador mentioned in the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Forestry. We want to do projects on the ground, like the project I mentioned in South Sulawesi, but we also need to work on research, we need to work on capacity building, we need to work on dissemination. And I think the team that you have here at the university, I think looks like a very serious partner that we should hopefully continue a future dialogue with. Thank you.
Thank you for the panel, for the answer. Can I open now second round? Pak Komara, please, and then Bapak yang di depan, and then one student there. Ya, 1, 2, 3, 4. I can take 4, ya 4, 5 di belakang. Oke, nanti 6, silakan. Oke, silakan Pak Komara.
Terima kasih Ibu Evi. Excellency Ambassador Canning, Pak Rektor, Pak Professor Gumilar, Ibu Amanda, colleagues. I'm Komara Jaya. Right now is the head of graduate program for urban studies. My master degree is from Birmingham, regional finance, you know that. But my PhD is from United States on natural resource and forestry economics. Actually, I got two things. As head of the graduate student for urban studies, what I'm looking for is kind of, well, everybody's already talked about the biodiversity, forestry. Now, I'm looking for urban. Well, as probably you know, 60% of the world population is living in urban area, and also Indonesia in 2020 or 2050, probably 200 people is living in the cities. So, we got a lot of pressure for environmental problem. Well, I know from the Indonesian National Action Plan, besides reducing carbon dioxide from LULUCF or forestry, but we do put a lot of efforts in reducing energy, transportations, what else? Industry. What I'm looking for is what kind of cooperation later on, of course with the hand of the NPE as well, to, urban area is more environmental friendly. That's one issue. The second issue is a bit politic. What I informed from Professor Emil Salim, the post-Kyoto is a bit gloomy. Gloomy in the sense that United States still out there, and what he informed us, he is Professor Emil Salim, that a country like Canada, Japan, I'm not quite sure, Australia and even EU and UK, going to be withdrawn from Kyoto Protocol. So my question is, what's your vision on such kind of world? You're talking a lot about climate change, but the big countries, the big polluters, everybody is goodbye with the discussion of climate change. I'm on my own way. That's my question. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Your Highness, Ms. Ambassador, and also good morning, Professor Gumilar. Let me introduce myself. My name is Andrew, and I'm lecturing in Faculty of Science, and I have done a lot of measuring the carbon stock from Papua and from the Sumatra. And yes, if we're talking about the climate change, we are talking about the science, politics, and the social, right? And those things need to be together. They should be danced in the same rhythm. Okay, I'll tell you a story about this current situation in Indonesia, and it could be an inconvenient truth. The first, the climate change issue in Indonesia, it's only become an euphoria. People talk about the climate change, everything. But what makes me worry is those climate change issue is not supported by the scientific database. So this is the big gap problem in Indonesia, and why the Indonesia cannot do a bargain at the international level, because in Indonesia we don't have, we lack of the scientific method, we lack of the method, we lack of the database. The NGO do their own method, so we don't have adequate database. So that's the first thing, and also if the scientists don't have the common ground, how about the people? The people also not well educated. They only think about the green, and the green is not that green. So that's the problem. The main issue in Indonesia is lack of education and lack of the science, and also lack of the method. And the second is there's English phrase that we are barking on the wrong tree. We said save the rainforest, we target the trees. I think that's the wrong, because last year I attended the conference with the C4, the United States based NGO. They said you are barking on the wrong tree. It's not the trees, but it's the peatlands. The trees only contains about the 100 ton of the CO2. The peatland is contains about the 1,000. And unfortunately, the Protocol Kyoto didn't targeting the peatland. They ignored the peatland. So that's the political issue. And the third one is the incentive. We said, okay, you save the people, and then the money will go directly on you. But the problem is, yeah, we can use the carbon trading instrumental, but there is still uncertainty about the payment. I've met about the person that do the certification. She is from the Washington and said, okay, it's not that easy. It's not that easy to do the carbon trading. There's a long way around. There's maybe you need a years. So I think it's very hard. When you talk with somebody from the top level, and then you go to the grassroots level, and there's no connection. The people over there, they are poverty, they're hungry, and they want to see the money tomorrow, so they can save the forest. But the top level said, no, forget it. You need years to do that. So yeah, there's some uncertainty about the carbon trading. And the last thing is about I want to address the question to Ms. Amanda Katali. SBA said 26%, it is not logic. So 26%, we will reduce the carbon emission. How? We are not Singaporean. We are not Singapore. If we are Singapore, we can do that. But how about the law enforcement? I've been visiting a lot of the forests, and then, yeah, cut forest, everything. I think my question is how you can reach the 26% reduction with the condition of Indonesia like this, with the lack of the force enforcement. And the question is for Your Highness, you have assigned to be ambassador in the various countries, right? From the Bangladesh, also from the Burma, and the Burma also nice, interesting, because now they released the Aung San Suu Kyi. And can you have a lesson learned how the Bangladesh, Zimbabwe take care of the forest, and is there anything that you can apply to solve the problem in Indonesia? Is there any model that can work in here? Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, a lot of question, complaint, and arguments. We'll go to the third question, please.
Thank you. Good morning, Ambassador Canning, Mrs. Amanda, and Bapak Rektor. As I have read, UK government and Indonesian government...
Can you identify yourself, please?
I'm sorry. My name is Clarissa, and I'm from the postgraduate program, University of Indonesia, International Relations Department. As I have read, UK government and Indonesian government have the Memorandum of Understanding on Climate Change, which signed in Poznan on December 2008, if I'm not mistaken. What I want to ask is, in order to address environmental concern and how significant is the MOU itself to solve the environmental problems in Indonesia? Thank you.
The fourth question. Yang pertanyaan kelima bisa stand tunggu di sana. Pertanyaan kelima.
Good morning. My name is Berta. I came from Biology Department from Faculty of Mathematics and Science of University of Indonesia. And what I'm talking here is just about sharing. Okay, in biology we have one program named Backspeak or Biology Exploring Week. This program is trying to share our knowledge to general people. Start from kindergarten student and then elementary until senior high school, and also the academics in other university. And what we have problem here is first we lack of expert speaker that expert in politics and also in the environment. What I'm talking here is, can you help us to be one of that speaker, or maybe Mrs. Amanda can help us to find the expert speaker. And somehow it's hard to have a speaker in general lecture in our faculty about climate change. We know that biology is one of major science that imply to climate change. So would you like to give us a public lecture in Faculty of Mathematics and Science? Thank you.
Thank you, Melika. Yeah, next.
Good morning. My name is Angga, undergraduate students majoring in communication science from Bunda Mulia University. Well, first, I have ever read about the article, in a short article, that in the next few decades that our Earth is going to be lack of water, going to be lack of the green areas. Well, actually, the people, they don't realize about the urgency of the climate change. So what we should do to realize those people who do not care about the climate change itself? Well, actually, if I have already got the suggestions, people keep saying that everything must begin from ourselves first. That can be true. However, they who do not care about that, it's really difficult to be told or to be informed about the urgency of this. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last one, yeah, please.
Morning, everybody. Thank you for this opportunity for me to talk. I'm Henik Taslim from PT Global Green. PT Global Green is a private sector company which we set up only for environmental business. Because of this climate change issue, so about 3 to 4 years ago, we are thinking within our family, how could we give support globally with this environmental issue, especially also how we change the mindset from a logging company in Indonesian forest, which we have known that our forest condition is degraded already in so many areas, which if we keep continuing on doing the business of logging only, that's not enough to change the climate to be better. So we decided to come to this business line where we can develop a business, but we give solution for globally, and we give development for the local community, which is our thinking. The most important thing is when we want to change, when we do something better, we need to change the mindset first. And it's involved globally. Everybody have to understand that we are talking about climate change is not just a climate change, because maybe not everybody is understanding about that. When we are talking about on the ground level, people is thinking about what can I eat today, right? to me, that's the most important, how people can survive day to day. Therefore, our thinking is, before we can talking about the business, we have to think first how we can approach the local community, how we can change their mindset, to change paradigm, how to do things that, yes, in the past we have to get money from logging, from killing animal, but now we can still survive, but we planting the tree for protecting the tree, protecting the endemic flora and fauna. Therefore, I think we need very huge support globally, from the political, from the science, from the institution, from everybody. One of my messages is only that from a business side, we already try our best to use our own money. We don't get any support from anywhere. Even the information is not clear actually, where we can track the information to help we do this business, because we want to be, actually my vision is few years ago, I think it might be too early, we would like to develop a role model of environmental business. So we hope that globally people not only thinking how to get the resource to get the money, but people have to think how to protect the resources, the natural resources, but we can have good living for everybody. That's my point. Therefore, maybe one of my messages is, maybe hopefully we all here gathering from the university, from embassy, from local, national, international, and student also. Hopefully we can work together as synergy. I believe that we are talking about global change, climate. Personally, people understand that yes, day to day we feel the climate is more hot. When we are going to some other country where before we are very cold, the weather is very cold, but now when we go there, we don't need any jacket anymore. Yeah, like Genting in Malaysia, we can feel it very dramatically change. Also in Indonesia, there are so many problem of the climate. You can see that when the wet season, the dry season is changing, unpredictable, and it's, sorry to say, it's impact to the local communities' welfare. So my message is hopefully we can work together, and also we need to develop a national or global communication line so everybody can access the information. For example, from us, we are focusing on the work to the work day. I am not the political, and I'm not much, don't have too much networking anywhere, so we need support where to go, where's the direction to go, where to get information, and hopefully we can get support, because our intention is not only profit, but our intention is let's develop welfare for everybody. So we have a win-win solution, everybody to be win. That's it. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay, we have a list of questions, complaints, arguments, and messages. So I will just let the panel to answer it.
Thank you for all your questions. I think we must have had at least 20 questions when you stood up. We will try and remember them all so that we can answer. One of my major roles within the UK Climate Change Unit is dealing with the international negotiations, mainly with the UNFCCC, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So I'd like to address the points made about Kyoto Protocol and the future. First, I'd like to assure you that the UK is 100% behind Kyoto Protocol. We worked very hard last year to ensure that the second Kyoto Protocol, KP2, would be agreed in Durban last December. We're very pleased that did go through, and we want to show that we will be responsible for our past, and we want to show that we will commit to everybody's future. I understand of course it's important that we get the big players, the big hitters, signed up to some part of deal. And for me, what was the inspiration in Durban at the end of last year was that for the first time we had a clear signal from China that they will consider coming in to a globally, legally binding deal in 2015 looking ahead to 2020. And for me, that was a huge moment. That was a massive change in what we've seen in previous years. And that gives me, and I hope it gives everybody, hope for the future of the UNFCCC process. I think that process has two main themes. The first theme is to build the case for increased global ambition. Essentially, that means let's do more. The second theme is to ensure progress towards that global legally binding deal so that we can keep the average temperature increase to within 2 degrees. And what that means is let's do it together. Let's do more. Let's do it together. It's only by doing more, it's only by working together to do that we will ensure your future, your children's future and your grandchildren's future is the future that you have for them in here. It's that picture that we're fighting for, and I do believe we can reach it. Regarding the peatlands, as part of that, Indonesia has the world's biggest peatland reserves. The peatland in Indonesia has more carbon held within it, stored within it, than the whole of the Amazon rainforest, which I think is an amazing fact. Obviously, it's essential that we can protect that, not only for Indonesia's benefit, but for the benefit of the whole world. I think with RED Plus and the deals that are currently being worked out within the UNFCCC, while peatland is not earmarked specifically within that, I think this is where your domestic action as part of the global, I think this is where it works. You have, last year you launched the Rencana Aksi Nasional Gas Rumah Kaca, the National Action Plan to reduce emissions by greenhouse gases, and it's how you translate that here in Indonesia. It's how you ensure that that will include peatland. It's how it can then reflect up at the global level. Okay, that's what I'd like to say about the international side. If I can pass it over.
Thanks, Stuart. I think the point that was raised about the concerns of the average person about what are they going to eat, what's their welfare, what's their jobs, what's their housing like is very important. We in the UK are obviously very aware that although Indonesia is the 18th largest economy by total GDP, that if you look at GDP per capita, Indonesia is still at a very low level of $3,500–4,000 per capita. So that means that the concerns and the priorities for growth are probably the number one priority in Indonesia for the future. And we are very aware of that. We know that Indonesia has to continue to grow, to provide the employment, to provide the growth that will help your economy develop in the future. But there are choices. There are choices about how that growth takes place. Now, one of the interesting things in Indonesia is that the energy demand in the future, and this comes back to the point about urbanization, is going to continue to grow. At present, I think something like only 67% of households in Indonesia have access to modern forms of energy, electricity. And the plan is to get to 90% by 2025, 2027. Now, to do that, the amount of energy capacity that will have to be installed is quite a staggering number. At the moment, there's 36,000 megawatts of energy installed in Indonesia, and the estimates are that that could grow by 5 times to meet future energy demand. So there's a real choice here, which is, does Indonesia do that primarily through coal, which is terrible for climate change because of the greenhouse gases, or does it try to do as much as it can through renewable energy? And I'm sure many people in the room know that Indonesia is blessed with the world's largest geothermal resources, which is wonderful for energy because it provides a constant base load, but is also wonderful for climate change because the emissions is virtually zero. So the issue is, can we, in partnership and also with others, work to try to help Indonesia move more towards renewable energy? And the good news is we can do that, but it requires commitment, policy commitment, which is there in Indonesia, but it also requires a change in the fiscal system to create the incentives. And this comes right back to one of the first points that the ambassador made, that we have to have fiscal incentives which encourage investment in that type of energy. Now we are working with the Ministry of Finance to do that, but so are many others. Organizations like the World Bank, for example, are providing a lot of finance in Indonesia to support renewable energy. Your government has made a commitment to move from 4%, which you currently get from renewables, to 17%, and we will work in partnership with the government to try to reach that target. So we do recognize the importance of energy, the importance of urbanization, because although the emissions from forestry and land use change are the most important contributor at the moment, if we fast forward to 2025, it will be energy, transportation, urbanization which become the big drivers. And we have to get that right. And we don't have to get that right just in Indonesia, it's in all of the large emerging economies. We have to get that right, because if everybody goes down the coal route, then the ambitions for 2-degree limit or 4-degree limit look virtually impossible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for all the excellent questions and inputs. I'm not going to mention who asked the questions, but I'm just going to review what has been asked or commented. In relation to the scientific database that you asked, the Indonesian National Council on Climate Change organized several activities related to the University Science and Technology Network, or Science and Technology Networks on Climate Change. So there have been several meetings already, and we asked the rectors of the universities to send their representatives, and UI was represented by Dr. Yatna. And in those events, about maybe 100 representatives from universities identified what have been carried out in their universities on education, research, and public service. So that is a good database that I could share with you, but of course it can be increased or it can be improved with the participation of many more universities. For example, in Kalimantan, there is the Trans-Kalimantan University Network that has 100 universities, either public or private universities. And another scheme that we have is the Indonesia Climate Change Center. It's meant to provide input for science-based policies, and one of the cluster is peatlands and peatland mapping. I could also send you some information on that. And in our council, we also have a division for carbon trading mechanism that could also explain activities or information on carbon trading activities. The public information activities, as I mentioned earlier, is the Indonesia Climate Change Education Forum and Expo, geared for high school students as well as the general public. But more on a professional side, we also have the Indonesia Carbon Update, as well as the Asia Forum on Carbon Update. And last month, it was attended by 500 people representing 19 countries. So it's also an event to provide information for the private sector, as Ibu Leni asked earlier. And there is also an event or an activity called the Green Innovation and Productivity, where we had information sharing with the private sector. Of course, if you can give me your emails, I would like to share the information to you as well. In relation to information request from Deta and Anda, we would be happy to participate in your events, of course. And there was a question how to increase public awareness. Events like this or activities like this is very important. As an example, the council has an event with, or not event, we call it a assessments of the public response on climate change, and there were 3,500 respondents on the public awareness activities. It shows the pre-event and post-event that their knowledge on climate change increased after public awareness activities. So it's important to have as many activities that we can on all level. Thank you.
Our third questioner asked if Indonesia had any lessons to learn from Myanmar and Zimbabwe. The answer is no. Bad governance means that these problems worsen. And one of the things that is really good to see about current developments in Myanmar, current hopeful developments, is we hope that the resources in that beautiful country are better looked after than they were under the military government. I just wanted to say, I know that many of you have to go to prayers, many of you have to go to lectures, so I wanted to say a warm thank you from all of us from the British Embassy for receiving us today. I wanted to say in particular a warm thank you to Bapa Rector for having us and his excellent staff, to our wonderful moderator, to Ibu Amanda, and particularly to you. Terima kasih.
Bapak dan Ibu, please join me also to applaud all of our panels today. Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Canning, Ibu Amanda, Pak Max. We have to wrap up. Thank you for your participation, and I would like to invite you also to watch and study this map. It's maybe have a lot of questions there. That's our job to find the answer. Thank you and have a good day.